Morning, good morning. Now, welcome. My name is Tim Kennerup. I am Vice President of Sales for QCM Technologies in our uh, here in Scottsdale, Arizona. And thank you for attending the M365 webinar today. Customers, partners, employees, super important subject, and we're starting on time to reward all you people that are on time and early. And but we are going to be recording it, and you can always reach out to your QCM rep or Zona Brandt to get this recording for your organization or for yourself, so that you have it for reference in the future. I would be remiss, since it's kind of a Microsoft theme today, to say, well, if you haven't heard, yesterday was the last day for Windows 10. So if there's still any Windows 10 in your organization, you should be all over getting that done. QCM can help you, or you can go to your current team inside that handles that for you. But do not let that slip. It should be out of your organization by now. No more support for that product. So thank you for attending. Couple quick little items before I hand it over to our distinguished presenter. We are going to keep you on mute, and we are going to let it run. I'd like you to, so you don't forget, if you have a question, just put it in the chat. Steven will not respond right away at that, but what we'll do is we'll take them in order. And as he goes through gets through his presentation, he'll wait till the very end, towards the end of his presentation when he's allowed some time, and we'll chronologically go through any questions that are in the chat. And we will then, after that, open it up for the mic with what little time that will be remaining if you have duplex questions you want to do an interaction. But again, thank you for attending. We appreciate your business and your partnership. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Steven Thraen. Steven Thraen has been with QCM Technologies 20 years. He's been in the industry for 45. He is a super knowledgeable Microsoft expert, and that's why you're here. And so, Steven, without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you very much. Can you guys hear me okay? Give me a thumbs up if you know how to do that. Otherwise, I'm going to assume we're in good shape. All right. Thank you very much for giving me the thumbs up. Awesome. Thank you, everybody, for coming today and listening to me talk to you for a little while. And part of what I'm going to be covering is really about Microsoft 365, how it's licensed, how it's priced, how you can look at it in your organization to understand what the different license subscriptions and add-ons mean, and how to take a really good hard look at the license types and determine what are the right ways to potentially put those in service in my organization. And it used to be really simple. We used to be able to just go pick one or two or three different license subscriptions, and roll them out, and we were good. But today, now there's hundreds and hundreds of licenses. There's a lot of add-ons that come into the licenses that can get added onto the licenses. And Microsoft would love it if we just purchased a subscription to a license and added 3 or 4 add-ons to it, and we'd be good to go, and you would have the right features and things like that are okay. However, it wouldn't necessarily be in your best benefit from that perspective because of the pricing models and the way that they're set up. So I'm going to talk about that, and I'm going to show some examples of how the different add-ons are stacked, and maybe sometimes it makes sense to upgrade a license to the next one up in the stack to get the features but save yourself some money. So we'll talk about that. And then the bigger challenge that I typically run into, and my team runs into a lot, is when we have customers that are trying to decide what licenses to use, what license makes sense for us, how does that work, how do we figure that out? That seems to be a kind of a common thread that we see and hear all the time. And there's a lot of effort put into that, not only from our team's perspective, QCM's perspective, but also from your organization's perspective too, to try to figure that out. Sometimes it seems like it might make sense to press what's I'll call the easy button, just say let's give everybody the same license and we're good to go. And while you can do that, and maybe it works for you in your environment, but that's not necessarily the best way to go about doing it. So I'm going to talk about how you could kind of look at that in your organization and develop a process to do that. So with those things in mind, there's a few other things I'm going to cover in here as well. I'm going to add a little bit of AI into this because who shouldn't be doing that nowadays as well, even though this is really more around Microsoft 365. And I've got a couple of items that you might be interested in getting from us at no charge, of course, when we're done with this, but I'm going to show that off as well. So off from the first slide, let's go to move something different. Tim did a nice job of introducing myself. I've been doing IT work for a long, long time, and across lots and lots of customers and enterprises, things like that, even before QCM. So most of you, I think, probably know me already. Again, Steven Thraen with QCM here for 20 years. Used to work for a company called Siemens, and I was a CIO for a global chemical company a number of years before that. And a lot of background in computer science and business management on the infrastructure and IT side. All right, next slide up. All right, so there's a couple of things to talk about here, and this is how Microsoft typically prices and licenses the models. And there's really just a few methods in which they do that. One, the easiest one is called just per user subscription. There's a fixed monthly or annual rate per each one of the seats that you might have, each subscription or SKU or bundle that you might have.
Steven, let me enter. Are you sharing?
Hold on one second. Maybe it's not sharing.
I'm not seeing anything, but
all right. Give me a second.
And they're muted, so.
Yep.
We don't see anything either.
Yeah.
There
How
we
about
go.
now?
Now.
Looks good.
First slide. There you go. Okay. So I'll keep talking, by the way. So give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down or something. So that'd be great. All right. So per user subscription, they're basically a fixed monthly or annual rate per seat. That's typically what that means. There are a couple different ways to acquire them and pay for them, and we'll talk about that in a second. The second component of that is once you have some of these basic licenses, you might also have these add-ons. And the add-ons are ones that are popular now, are Copilot or Intune. Some of the compliance tools are out there. And what an add-on means is that you must have a per user subscription license to add it to. So you can't just go purchase, as an example, hey, I want Copilot, but I don't have any other Microsoft licensing for that user. So I can't attach a Copilot license to that because Copilot's considered an add-on. The type of licenses that you would normally use, and there's a few categories of them. So Business Basic, that's for Business Standard, Business Premium, and I'll go through these a little bit more detail in a minute. Those are for smaller SMB type customers that are never going to go over 300 seats. There's the enterprise type licensings that have a letter tied to them, like an E3 or an E5, those kinds of things. There's some standard license bundles and there's some premium license bundles, and we'll talk about those as well. The other option that you have is some things called consumption-based subscriptions. And consumption-based isn't really based on a user. It's really based on use, how much you would consume. And cases like that are, for instance, in your Microsoft 365 tenant, you would get, say, 1 terabyte of disk space to use across your enterprise for all of your organization. to put files in SharePoint and Teams and things like that. But when you approach the max limit for your organization, then Microsoft is going to ping you and say, hey, you're approaching your limit and you need to either not do anything else or add anything more to it, or you can purchase some storage licenses. And they're very inexpensive from that perspective, but it's based on the consumption that's used. And then there's some other consumption-based licenses that are more around the Business Pro, the Power BI, the API type licenses where you are looking to do some sort of API transactions, and then there's a licensing based on the number of transactions per month, et cetera. So when you get into Power BI and those kinds of things, that might come into play for you. But that's a consumption-based license type. So those are the basic licensing models. Now let's talk about how they get invoiced to you. All right, so I drew this little graph, and I'll explain what I'm trying to represent here. So basically, if we purchased one license, and we're just going to say it's one user license at this point, there are 3 different ways to consume this license. One, which used to be what Microsoft did last 4 years ago or 5 years ago. It was just you purchased a license. It was an annual subscription. If you canceled it, then you got prorated what you didn't use. Microsoft got rid of that after COVID. They don't do that anymore. When COVID happened, millions of licenses got canceled. They lost a ton of dollars, and it hurt their business. So they said, we're changing, and they went to this model called NCE, N as in Nancy, C as in Charlie, E as in Echo. So New Commerce Edition is what it's called today. And in that platform, there's just 3 ways. One is an annual subscription, just like they used to do. But when they say it's an annual subscription, you're committing to holding that license or paying for that license for the entire year. If you give it up 5 days after you've purchased that license, too bad. Microsoft's not going to give you any recompense. They're not going to do any prorating at all. You've paid for that license annually. It doesn't preclude you from being able to take that license and move it from user 1 to user 2. You can move the licenses around to any individual users that you want at any time during that commitment cycle. So if you have, say, for instance, you have a receptionist, I'm just going to use that as an example. We purchased an annual license for the receptionist because we know we're going to always have one. And that receptionist leaves, we bring another receptionist in, and we can just reassign that same license back to that receptionist. We don't have to purchase another license for that new receptionist, so to speak. They can just use the same one that you have. The second method that you have, and typically, annual commit is usually the least costly license. They give us the biggest discount. They give you the biggest discount for that because they know that you're committing to pay for that license upfront. That's what you're doing, paying for it upfront. That's what the indication of the line here shows on the first month. We're paying for it on day 1, and we don't pay for it again for the annual until it gets renewed at the end of the 12 months. And then it would be either set to renew automatically or manually, or you would just let it go away and you would lose that license. So let's just say, for instance, if that's the case in an annual, maybe the upfront cost, if you pay all upfront, I put $120 here on the example, which would kind of tie it out to $10 per month, if you will. But most often when they do annual licenses, for most licenses, it will be a little bit less than that. So let's just say it's $110. So annual cost, you pay for it all up front. It's $110 upfront, day 1, and you don't pay for it again until 12 months later. The second way that they do this is still an annual commit. And this annual commit is the same commitment length and the same commitment requirements. I can't get rid of it, though I won't get any money back or anything along those lines. But I'm going to get invoiced every single month. And there's just a teeny uplift in cost for that typically. So in the example here, I show that you're getting the license on month 1, and every month you're paying that $10 monthly fee. You're going to get invoiced for that. So over the course of 12 months, it ends up being $120 for that particular license. So that's more of a normal. Most of our customers, this is the route that we typically try to get them down the path of when it makes sense to do so. If it's a low cost license, maybe you pay for it all up front. But when they're a little bit more expensive, this is typically we see. It helps you budget your cash flow. It helps you budget what your recurring monthly operating expenses are for, at least for subscription licensing from Microsoft's perspective. And it helps you keep it on an even line where everything's not shown up to be invoiced on, June 30th every year, something like that. The last option that they have is what's called a monthly subscription. And that one, the commitment is only monthly and you pay for it monthly. So that one's going to be the highest price license that you can purchase from Microsoft. They're really trying to prevent you from doing that. However, if you have a workforce that really needs that kind of license, if you have seasonal workers, you have people working for the holidays, things like that, you want to give them an email license for the 3 or 4 months that they're holiday workers, then use the monthly subscription, because if you pay for that over the 4 months, maybe that's $48. If I had to do an annual commit for them, that's $120. So I'm saving some money by thinking about the type of a license and the commitment rate of the license that I want to apply to the type of people that I have. So those are the 3 ways that Microsoft sells these licenses now. So annual commit, all paid up front, annual payment, annual commit, monthly payment or monthly invoicing, and monthly commit with monthly invoicing. So those are the 3. Okay. All right, on to the next one. All right, so this next piece here, we're going to talk about the different types of plans that they have and kind of what they mean. The first one, the business plans, they're business basic. Really, they're set up for small and medium businesses that are going to have under 300 users. And let me explain the 300 users a little bit clearer. Any of the business licenses, you can't have over 300 of those licenses total in your Microsoft tenant. So you could have 100 Microsoft 365 Business Basic. You could have 100 Microsoft 365 Business Standard. You could have 100 Microsoft 365 Business Premium. That's 300 licenses. That still meets the ability to use the business license packages. It also doesn't prevent you from purchasing any of the enterprise licenses. So if you wanted to purchase some enterprise licenses as well, so like the Microsoft 365 E3 is an example, you can purchase those as well as the business basic, standard, and premium license as well. So there's a mix and match of any license types that you have, as long as we're meeting the rules that Microsoft lays out for us. When we talk about business basic, usually that's web and mobile office apps. It's Exchange Online Mail, it's OneDrive, SharePoint, and Teams. It's usually used for somebody who just wants cloud productivity, email, and no real desktops, right? So that's the business basic component. If you want the downloadable, installable apps, then that would be a business standard at the middle road there. And that would still provide you all those other things on the cloud side, but it would also give you the ability to download your Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Exchange, Outlook, that kind of thing, and put that on your machines as well. And then Premium is the same as Business Standard, but they roll in a few other premium type add-on components. So Intune, conditional access policies, advanced security and compliance features, device management, some things like that are in there. So from a security perspective, that's the best license to purchase for your organization if you do need the downloadable apps. Okay. The enterprise plans, the one that I have listed here, Microsoft 365 E3, E5, there are some others that come into play. These are more for larger organizations. So if you need more than 300 licenses of say Business Standard as an example, you can't really do that. So you would have to jump up to the Microsoft 365 E3 license. And this is typically for like knowledge workers, people that need some compliance and some security and productivity, the productivity suite, like all the core Office applications. This also gives you some security components, some identity management. It gives you some e-discovery, depending on the region that your organization is in. Mostly in the United States, it's pretty good from that perspective on the E3 side. That's the typical license that we see a lot of people purchasing for the larger organizations in most cases. The E5 license includes everything from E3, but it also has some advanced analytics. It's got a lot more around security and compliance and risk detection tools, token theft prevention, things like that. And it also includes some things around Power BI, et cetera. So those are more the high-end user folks that are out there as well. There's another plan that we don't see too often. This is really for what I would call first-line workers, workers that are mostly mobile, and it's called the frontline plans. And the frontline plans, they're looking for people that are mobile first, right? So they're looking for maybe retail field staff, people that might be running around doing inventory. It's a lighter cost type thing. Hold on one second. You're not seeing slides, she says.
It might have been me. Can you reshare, Steven? Thank you.
Yeah, don't click on anything. Don't click on reshare. There you go. All right.
Technology is for selling, not using.
Yeah, fair enough. All right. Can we see that again now? It's the same. I've been talking about the same slide.
Yes. I just clicked it. My bad.
All right, fair enough. Thank you. Okay. So frontline workers, these are, like I said, limited folks, retail, potentially field staff, somebody who doesn't have a desktop. And maybe it's a tablet, something along those lines. And it does give you some of those features, but the web version as well. And there's also a consumer version. I won't really talk about it too much here, but there's Microsoft 365 Personal and Family. I personally have that for my family, and it gives you Office apps and some OneDrive and some Outlook and some different things like that as well at a nice price for your family. And then there are also some new collaboration components that are out there as well. So some things around bundling of Microsoft 365 plus Copilot. There's some around some things called Viva. There's Walkie Talkie, which is actually really good for the frontline workers. It's like a Teams account, but instead of Teams just being up and down all the time, it would be like you had a real walkie-talkie. So you would run the app and you would you talk on it and say whatever, and then you would hit the button to say you're done. So like it's the old school days of hey friend, I'm here. Can you hear me? Blah 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 blah. Over. And then when you hit the button, the other person on the other end can talk. So it does like walkie-talkie two-way push to talk type scenario for that. So that's kind of a cool feature for people that are in the field that need, real-time access. All right, so those are some common subscriptions that are out there, probably the most common all the way across the board. Let's see, what else do we have here? So Copilot, that's been a big one for the past probably year with the advent of cloud kind of being not the word of the day. AI is now the word of the word of this decade, maybe for a while. And we're finding and seeing it in lots more environments, people finding lots of ways to use it. I will actually show you a way to use it with this a little bit later. Defender for Business, that's included with some business premium. That's Microsoft's version of endpoint protection. It's an add-on also. And then you have some of these things like Power Automate, Power Apps, Power BI. If you have people that are into building dashboards and doing analytics and things like that, really higher end advanced automations, that's really those add-ons that you have. Additional storage, I talked about that already, and then the Teams phone, and then the push to talk type things that are out there as well. So those are all licenses, types of licenses, and some supplemental type things that can kind of get added around into there. All right. I talked about Viva already a little bit, so I don't have to really cover that again. Here's a little bit more detail about the frontline workers. I know this one's not as popular as others, but if you have these kinds of employees in your environment, this is a really inexpensive license to pay attention to. And it could be advantageous for you to be able to utilize that one. So just kind of don't discount that one if you have those kind of people that are out in the field. If you have, example, if you're in healthcare as an example, and you have nurses that go out and visit people in the field, and you need them to be able to communicate immediately, as long as they have a network connection or hotspot, et cetera, the walkie-talkie, the shift component, all those kind of things can work really well with your tablets from that standpoint. All right. With all this being said, and all these different types of license and all the different types of features and things like that that come into play, QCM built a PDF that if you're interested in getting a copy of this PDF, you can ping Zona after. And this PDF takes these typical products that we have. So the Microsoft business products, the enterprise products, and the higher end enterprise products. And it lists every single feature that each one of the products gets. So if I look at this one, the Microsoft business packages are in the middle. You can see the basic, the standard, and the premium. They mostly cover all of the same products all the way down, midway down the page. And then when you see you've got a premium license, you can see the Defender gets added and some other components that are there. But we don't go just tell you the high level feature. We give you all the different features that are below that as well. All right, but that actual file is 11 pages long, and I didn't really want to put it on a slide, so I am showing you here. There's a lot more of the features that you see below, all the way down through all of the add-ons that are possible with all of these particular different primary subscriptions that we've been talking about here for a little while. So if you're interested in seeing this, this is really an easy way to lay out what the features are for each of the different subscriptions and how you might apply that to the users. Do they need this? Do they don't need this? Does it include this? Does it not include this? We put this together because it is hard. And there was no real easy place that Microsoft says it'll show you some high level stuff, but they don't really go into the detail too often of pulling these things together. So if you're interested in that, you can ping Zona and we can make sure she gives that to you. All right. How do we actually go about figuring out what kind of licenses that we want in our environment, right? So I talked about that at the onset. That was something that I was going to cover for a few minutes. The basic things that you really want to think about are, what do my people need to do, and how do I make sure that the license meets the needs that they might have? And there's a couple ways to go about it. One, like I said, the easy button, you can do that. Or two, you can define, and maybe you have defined, what type of users you have. Maybe you put them in categories. Maybe you have folks that are light users or medium users or power users, those kinds of things. There's a few thought processes that you might also take into consideration around subscription licensing that might be different than your regular work type things that these end users are doing for you. So an idea that you have is to kind of make it persona based, right? So the type of user that you have, and then the type of work that they do, and what kind of roles they might have in your environment. There's a fairly standard way that you could probably apply that logic to figuring out what kind of licenses make sense, and then go into it a little bit deeper with like that chart and make sure that the features that you're looking for match up. The other thing that you want to make sure of too is that you implement some sort of life cycle for the use of your licenses, right? So we talked early on about a license has an annual commit or it has a monthly commit. Those are the two commit types. What happens when they get renewed? What happens when we have users that come and go? So onboarding of users, offboarding of users. Those licenses still sit there when they're offboarded because more than likely we're not offboarding people exactly at the time the license expires. And we're probably not onboarding exactly at the time that the license renews. So those kinds of things we have to think about in our environments to how do we utilize um, those license subscriptions in the best way possible so that we get, the best return on our investment. So those are things that you might want to think about. The other thing to think about is to probably set up some sort of tickler to allow you to sit down and look at, how are we doing? Do we have enough licenses? If you don't, do we have too many licenses? That's usually the case that we find happening. There are organizations to go out and say, hey, I want to buy 10 extra and just leave them sit there. Well, if you buy 10 extra and they don't get used, you paid for those. If you're purchasing your licenses through QCM, you can put in a ticket to request us to set up a license for you. And typically that license can be set up within a couple of hours without any real issue at all. So there's no need to have some on the fly unless you're, bringing on a whole bunch of people, every night or weekend or whatever the case might be, and you don't want to be bothered with the other. But it's probably not in your financial benefit to do that kind of a thing. If you do want to do that, and you know that you have some transitional workforce, then maybe a monthly license or two might be helpful. But again, you're going to pay for that on a monthly basis. So, all the rules that I talked about earlier come into play. All right. So another thing that you would consider is a persona. So let's talk about what personas might look like. So I'm going to give you some examples of what some of these personas look like and what types of roles they might have in your environment, and then what kind of licenses are typically assigned to those kind of folks. So we'll kind of spin through these. So let's talk about a knowledge worker. So a knowledge worker is somebody that's more of a high end. We might have called them power users in the past. They might be looking at more at analytics and some of those kind of things. So Copilot, so Power BI might be in there as well. They need the desktop version of all their applications. They may be tied to better, more data that your company needs. So maybe having a little bit more security on them makes a lot of sense. So if you're an enterprise, that's like an E3 license. If you're an SMB, a smaller one, then maybe the business standard license is the route to go for that with some add-ons. All right. The next one that we have up is a power user or an executive. These folks are typically ones that are like directors, data scientists, those kind of things. They might handle sensitive data. They have needs that are probably around governance, risk, and compliance. They might utilize AI tools or AI tools that somebody else might have created. They probably are looking into analytics, and you probably want to have a really strong security posture for these folks. So there's some options here on why those kind of things matter and what that person might look like. The next one is frontline. I talked about those a little bit more than I would normally talk about these. Again, I think this is an underused license, if you will. So this kind of gives you some ideas around that. Retail staff, health workers. These folks have limited really device access use. They might use shared terminals like kiosks and things like that, or mobile devices or tablets, and it's lightweight collaborative type work that they're doing. That's typically what we see here. And most of the time they're going to be utilizing things like Teams or mobile office or collaboration tools like the push to talk, like I mentioned ago, those kind of things. This one, IT security specialists, things like that. IT people always want everything. That's not always necessary. You want to give them what they need to be able to do their role. So they typically might manage your users. They might deal with device security, user access. We want a lot more around auditing and control from a security perspective and reporting type things. So sometimes the items that have the add-ons for This extra security, the Entra P2 type license, those are really important from this perspective, making sure that they have the right endpoint protection and the audit tools that are in place for that, so that if there is some situation that's going on, that we can actually, or they can actually trace what they've done through audit rules and audit information, and to find out exactly what happened. So that's pretty important for that group of folks. All right, the next ones, I think I missed one. Yep. So there's also the possibility of having developers. So some of your organizations may have somebody that does development, and they may outsource development. That's a possibility too, or they may have no development. But if it's a developer type role, there's usually a few extra things that they're going to have that others may not, and they're really going to be around the add-ons for the most part, the Power Apps, the Power Automates, the Azure components. Sometimes they'll have some other subscription-based things like Visual Studio Pro to get the applications that they need to do their development work, etc. So these also may need coding tools. They may need sandbox environments where they're doing like staging work, not on production. They may have integration to other tools that are out there. And again, you want to pay attention to those because sometimes they have the keys to the kingdom. Some of the breaches that have happened over the past years have happened at the developer role level. So it's important to still make sure that they're secured properly. Contractors, external partners, financial auditors, somebody that you might give access into your environment. They don't necessarily need every bell and whistle. They do need an account into your environment if you want them to have one of those. You always want to make sure that you have some security around that. So the conditional access policies like Entra P1, you always want to make sure that they're set up to do multi-factor. If I was a little bit more concerned about the security for them, I would probably add an Entra IDP2 license, which adds a lot more granular control, token and identity management type things that are added to that one. We really want to make sure that these kind of people are secure because most of the time they're not our full-time employees. And another one that's typical is administrative or what we call our back office staff. Those people are doing all of our really hard work on the back end side. So they have a lot of needs around email calendars, typically Word, Excel. They do a lot of collaboration from from the work that they do on a regular basis. If you're able to do things like Teams phones, then some of their collaboration could actually happen over Teams, and you don't even have to have a real phone from that perspective. So that's kind of cool too sometimes. But it's a lot of collaboration, a lot of productivity type things that these folks do. And again, there's some licenses that are here that kind of tie to that. I mentioned a minute ago that we want to pay attention to governance and risk management. One of the things that you would want to do maybe as an organization is to not necessarily adopt every single one of these personas or come up with your own personas, but you want to have a few of them. Usually it's 3 or 4 or 5 that make up most organizations and most of the roles that you do. And then this way, it makes it easier when you're bringing somebody on. You can map somebody to that particular persona or whatever the category is that you might call it. And then you would have a couple of licenses to pick from. You would also know what add-ons you might need for those folks as well. And you might know what security add-on components that you might want for them as well. And then, as I mentioned earlier, put some sort of review process in place so that you can actually look at this on a regular basis, whether it's quarterly or biannually or annually, whatever makes sense to do in your environment. Those are the kind of things that you want to do so that you can pay attention to the licensing component of that. That way, when it comes time to bring new people on, you have a much better idea. You're able to get that done faster, quicker. You don't have to reach out and try to go figure that out on your own, or misstep and purchase the wrong license that you might need for an annual basis, and then can't actually utilize that license for them because they need something different. So those are things that you might want to consider. All right. And you want to try to just assigning licenses to people, the easy button. This is really, it would be really easy for me to just say, hey, I can give E5 to everybody and everybody would be fine, and they would be. However, the challenge with that is that one cost me the most amount of money, right? So E5 licenses are in the, $40 and $50 a user per month type basis. So that's way more than we would want to spend on a regular basis, I would think. So we really want to get back into the figuring out what the role is and then assign the right license, match the license to the role. That's what you want to do. We want to regularly review the reports, right? And we can reallocate licenses, like I mentioned before. You can do that whenever you want. There's no issues with that. Downgrading licenses can only happen at the end of the commit term. So if I have purchased some E3 licenses, some M365 E3, and I don't need that anymore, and I need business standard now, I have to wait till the end of my time. I've purchased a business standard, but I can't actually remove the E3 license until the end of the commitment time frame for that. So that's the case. The opposite is not true. If I want to upgrade a license, so say I had business standard, this is another good optimization type of thing. If I have business standard for somebody and they need to have an E3, we can actually upgrade that business standard license to an E3 license in the middle of the commit term, and the commit term endpoint still stays the same. But the license is an upgrade at that point instead of what I'll call a rebook, where we would cancel one and reinstitute the other license like we would have done in the past. So that's not the way that we do that anymore from that standpoint. Always try to bundle add-ons where possible. What does that mean? So in some of these cases, we have the Intune licenses or the Power BI licenses, those types of things, the Entra licenses, etc. Some of the higher end licenses already include those. So you always want to look at the license type and make sure that you actually have the features that you need added in, and assign it to the right type of a license to get the best bang for your buck, right? So, and we'll talk about that in a little bit second from now. And then always take a look at the costs. QCM, we actually provide the licenses at a discount from what Microsoft's MSRP is to all of our customers. And then stay up to date on add-ons and things like that as they come into play, because Microsoft's adding something new all the time. Inefficiencies, I've talked about some of these. Underutilized, we've got some licenses that may not be out there. They're out there that are not being used. They're sitting there, not applied to somebody. That's what we call shelfware. If we're over licensing, this is like adding the E5 license to everybody, but yet they didn't really need it. So that's a very common thing. And then add-on charges, right? So all the extra add-ons, somebody might come to us and say, hey, I need Intune in my environment. And we'll say, okay, great, let's add Intune. But we might be able to get you a better license for a cost that includes Intune if it makes sense to do so. So those are things that you want to make sure that we have that discussion, so that it's just not just go add Intune or that kind of thing, because that could save you a few dollars here and there. And especially if you have a lot of licenses, it could happen a lot. Storage, these are the consumption ones. If you stop using that storage or you don't need it anymore, then let's make sure that we get those kind of things looked at as well. And then I mentioned the life cycle of accounts, users onboarding and offboarding. When people come and go, we want to make sure that we reclaim those licenses, drop them into the not used pool, make sure we know that, so that when we have to add somebody new, we can pick up one instead of adding another license for another purchase. And now I've got 10 unused licenses instead of 9, or whatever the case might be. Okay. So those are things that we want to do and think about. Other ones, using premium SKUs when you didn't need to, reclaiming, we talked about that. Overlapping or incompatible, just because I picked a license, I didn't do the homework up front to figure out what license I really need, and I'm out of luck from that perspective. If you have compliance regulations and things like that, you want to make sure that the license that you have is capable of providing those types of things like e-discovery, legal hold, things like that. If you think that that's something that you'll need in your environment, Otherwise, those get added on later and can be costly. And then leveraging any of the other add-ons and things like that that might be there. Just because it's not in the license that you have doesn't mean that we can't find a bundle that matches the feature set you need. That's why that spreadsheet's pretty helpful as well. All right, this next one I'm going to go through pretty quick, but this one, Microsoft's got new stuff that's changing here in November. Most of our customers are not going to probably be affected, but I just want to point it out anyway. One thing to always pay attention to if you see any of these types of announcements from a Microsoft perspective, if you have questions about them, ask us. We're happy to walk through that or set up a session to talk about those kind of things with you. But I'm going to run through these really quick, and the slides will have all the info. This mostly applies to folks that have EA agreements. So if you have an enterprise agreement with Microsoft already, they used to have this concept called tiers, A, B, C, D, E type tiers. They're removing them all. They're basically taking the EA agreements and they're turning it to the exact same platform costs that Microsoft 365 has. That's really what's going on. So if you have an EA agreement and you've got a bunch of discounts on your tier D or whatever the case might be, or your tier B, you can expect those to go away. This starts November 1st. And any software that's perpetual, so like if you bought SQL or Windows licensing, like Windows Server, Windows Desktop, etc., those license prices don't change. Azure consumption is also still based usage, so it doesn't really have anything to do with it. And then government and education, those are not included. Anything else is open to this change, okay? You'll potentially see, if you're one of those levels in an EA, you're going to see price increase. Here's some sample percentages that I have from Microsoft that said they're approximately this. That might make you want to shift from having an EA agreement to work directly with a cloud service provider like ourselves, because our cost might be less than what you might get if they wipe out your whatever your discounts are on your enterprise agreements. And then these are the things that I would just do is go take a look at your renewal costs, what that's going to be. If you have that, take a look at the pricing that you're going to get and validate that against what you might get from a cloud service provider. If there's anything that you can consolidate, then that's great. And then come talk to us about those kinds of things if you need any help on those items. And then here's kind of what I'll leave it at. This is the key takeaway slide. I'm not going to read through these or talk about these. We've already talked about them enough. I'd like to now have the mics opened up and maybe go through any of the questions.
Steven, if you want to go ahead and go to the chat, I think there is some, you can do those, and then Zona can open up the mics and go from there.
Yeah. All right. So we have a question around an audit of the licensing and things like that. Reach out to your customer success manager or your QCM account executive. And if you don't have one or you don't know who that is, you can reach out to Tim Kennerup and we'll get that lined up for you. We're happy to sit down, pull the licenses that you have and walk through those licenses and what they mean in the features and help you right size and optimize these items. We're happy to do that. We like doing that. I don't like people spending more money than they have to. That's one of the reasons that we want to do these kinds of webinars and talk to you guys through these things. Another question that we have is, can we mix and match annual commitment with monthly commitment? And the answer to that is yes. It's a la carte. You can mix and match any of them you want. So say, for instance, if I have a Microsoft small business standard license, I could have some that are an annual commit. I could have some that are an annual commit with monthly invoicing, and I could have some that are a monthly commit with monthly invoicing. There's no rules that say you can't do any of that. It's just makes it a little bit harder when you're looking at your invoice to say, oh, I got 3 of the same license, but they all have different parameters around them from that perspective. So definitely can do that, and no challenge whatsoever. Also, you can mix and match any of the families of licenses, right? So from the the SMB type licenses and the enterprise type licenses and the premium type licenses, all of those can be mixed and matched. Even if you're not an enterprise, you can still have enterprise licenses if you need those features from that standpoint.
So, Stephen, I'm going to interject something as well off one of those questions and give it a little bit more context. We had this webinar on purpose to enable or kind of educate the masses, and we're going to keep doing it. Now we have it recorded. We'll send it out. What the best way to have the best, most effective meeting with us is go through this so you have a little bit of understanding of some of these key things that Stephen went through. Personas, general licenses. Oh my gosh, that matrix that he put together, it would have taken anybody 24 man days or making it up just a ton of time to do this. This is hard. Microsoft does not make this easy. Now, so do a little bit of background, understand where you are in your own environment, then come with questions. And then it becomes such an eye-opening aha moment where we work together, roll up our sleeves, and get you to the better price point that you need to, but more importantly, the right tool for the right job, for the right person. And that's kind of the big takeaway. I will try to give you some solace. I put my camera on just to show how gray and white my hair is. I'm older than Steven, and this space is old, but you are, whether you're enterprise or SMB, Microsoft by far today has the best tools. Google is very difficult. I'm not saying don't go there. I will just give you this advice. In my 20 plus years here at QCM as well, we have taken people over to Google because they wanted to stick it to the man, and then they paid us to do that, and then they came back. So be smart with your dollars, but they are making a very good collaborative product for your partners, your customers, your manufacturers. So that's why it's there, but you got to be cost effective, and you've got to do the research, and it is good. So doesn't mean you can't go to the other ones that may seem like they're a little bit less, but they don't work very heavily with the outside world. That's what we would quickly give you a takeaway. So
I have one more item too.
Please go, Stephen.
All right. So I mentioned I was going to show you a little AI trick that I have here, right? So with all of the stuff that I just showed you, I've pulled up my Copilot chat, and if you have some of the Microsoft 365 applications, Copilot chat actually comes with it. So if you set that up to run, you can ask it all kinds of different questions. So I prepared a question. And this question is to say, if I have some licenses and I want to add some things to my licenses, what would be the best things for me to do? And that's kind of a lay release of this, right? So I'm going to ask that to Copilot and let it do that. And of course, I told it I thought it'd be fun. So I told it to pretend he's Clint Eastwood when he comes up with this. So just by me asking that question, it's gone out and it's looked at least cost to most expensive cost. And you can see some of the license we actually even talked about here. It's given us some pricing here, and it's comparing the pricing, right? So Business Basic plus a couple of add-ons makes it $20 a month. If you buy Business Premium, like I mentioned, if you bundle some of those, you can see it's $2 more, but you also get some other additional features on top of that. So maybe that's worth the $2. But again, that would be an upgrade in license, a bundled license. An E3, so say for instance, if you pick the easy button and you picked E3 or E5, E5 gives you everything under the sun, but as you can see here, at a cost of $57 per user, that's probably not what I want to do for every single one of my users. But again, this gives you some sort of comparison. And then it tells you at the end a little bit of summary of, hey, this is what you might be doing. So if you have questions and you have access to Copilot or Copilot chat, you can certainly ask it these kind of silly questions. And all it's really doing is it's going out and grabbing the info in the Copilot space under the Microsoft tenant component and grabbing the info that it can and pull that in and giving you the answers in a way that might be more easily read. So just to show you that AI does have some uses, this was a really simple one, and I thought it might be kind of cool to show that out. So
Good. Awesome. Team, and any questions last minute? I want to end on time. I think he did a great job of staying to script, but yes, reach out to Zona or your customer success manager, your account exec, if you want to get further follow-up and get the items that Steven talked about. Any last minute questions?
well, thanks everybody for listening to me ramble on for 45 minutes or so. Hopefully it was useful for you.
We'll give you a couple minutes back to your day. Thank you for your relationship with QCM, and we look forward to future of these.